History is written by the victors. But what if we've been rooting for the wrong side all along? What if the so-called heroes were actually the problem, and the villains were just the ones willing to do what had to be done? Today we're diving into the most controversial villains in fiction. The ones who might not be villains at all. The ones who saw a broken world and decided to fix it, no matter the cost. Walter White, Breaking Bad, a high school chemistry teacher diagnosed with terminal cancer. A genius forced to wash cars to make ends meet. Walter White wasn't born a villain. He was created by a system that undervalued him and then discarded him at his most vulnerable. Society saw a monster who built a meth empire, but perhaps they missed the real story. A man who simply refused to die quietly, leaving his family with nothing but medical debt and pity. I did it for my family eventually became, I did it for me. I liked it, I was good at it. But is self-actualization in a rigged system really so wrong? In a world that rewards the ruthless, was Walter truly a villain? Or just someone who finally learned to play the game? The educational system failed him. The healthcare system abandoned him. So he built his own system. If he died a quiet, dignified death, would anyone have remembered his name? Would his family have survived? Light Yagami, Death Note. A brilliant student finds a notebook with the power to kill anyone whose name is written in it. Light Yagami didn't use this power for personal gain or petty revenge. No, he set his sights higher, creating a world without crime, and it worked. Under his vigilante justice as Kira, global crime rates plummeted. Murders dropped by 70%. Wars ceased. For the first time, the innocent could walk without fear, while the guilty trembled. Yes, his methods were extreme. Yes, his power corrupted him. But ask yourself, if you lived in a world where violent crime had virtually disappeared, would you really want the old world back? Society calls for justice, but balks at its implementation. When Light provided what the justice system could not, true deterrence, he became the villain. But was he wrong or just too efficient for our comfort? Magneto, X-Men. Eric Lansher watched his people systematically exterminated once before. As a Holocaust survivor, he recognized the early signs: registration, segregation, experimentation. He vowed never again. While Charles Xavier preached patience and cooperation, humans were building mutant hunting robots. While the X-Men played defense, anti-mutant legislation advanced. Magneto saw the writing on the wall that others refused to read. By any means necessary became his creed, not from hatred, but from painfully earned wisdom. History taught him that oppressors don't willingly relinquish power. It must be taken. Was Magneto's mutant revolution truly extremism, or just inevitable self-preservation? If your people faced extinction, would peaceful protest be enough? Or would you, too, become the villain history needs? Ozymandias, Watchmen. Adrian Veidt, the world's smartest man, looked at a world on the brink of nuclear annihilation and made a chilling calculation. Millions must die, so billions might live. In a world where superheroes existed, but couldn't stop human self-destruction, conventional heroism had failed. The Cold War was minutes from midnight, and mutually assured destruction guaranteed no survivors. So he orchestrated an alien attack that killed 3 million people, and united humanity against a common enemy. Nuclear tensions evaporated overnight. Former enemies became allies. Peace happened. The heroes tried to expose him, but one asked the critical question, does it matter when compared to Armageddon? If sacrificing 3 million saved 7 billion, was he truly wrong? Or just willing to bear the burden of an unthinkable choice? Killmonger. Black Panther. Abandoned as a child after his father's death, Eric Killmonger Stevens grew up in the streets of Oakland while his cousins lived as royalty. He saw his people suffering worldwide while Wakanda, a technological utopia, watched from the shadows. Wakanda had the resources and technology to liberate oppressed people around the world, but chose isolation and security instead. Was this neutrality or complicity? His methods were brutal. his tactics extreme, but his core argument? Wakanda had failed its global responsibility. The world's most advanced nation had become a bystander to centuries of injustice. Even in defeat, Killmonger won. T'Challa ultimately adopted his vision without the violence by opening Wakanda to the world. The hero implemented the villain's plan, so who was really right all along? Thanos. Avengers Infinity War. On Titan, Thanos proposed population control to prevent ecological collapse. His people called him mad. They refused. Then they all died, exactly as he predicted. The universe faces the same crisis on a cosmic scale. Finite resources, infinite growth. The mathematics of collapse is inevitable. Thanos didn't enjoy his solution, random, fair elimination of half of all life, but saw no alternative. And the terrible truth, it worked. Post-snap worlds saw recovering ecosystems, ending resource wars, and sustainable populations. Before the Avengers fixed things, nature was healing. Was Thanos cruel, or just courageous enough to make the hardest choice? If you could prevent future suffering for trillions by causing present suffering for billions, would you have the strength to snap? Johann Liebert, Monster. Johann Liebert never directly killed the majority of his victims. He simply showed people their true nature and let them act on it. A whisper here, a suggestion there, and ordinary people revealed the monsters within. Born from a Nazi experiment to create the perfect human, Johann became a mirror reflecting humanity's darkest impulses back at itself. He didn't invent evil, he exposed it where it already existed. His philosophy was simple. Humanity's civilized veneer is paper thin. Remove a few social constraints and people become what they truly are. He didn't corrupt the innocent. He simply revealed who was already corrupted. If Johann is a monster for exposing humanity's inherent darkness, what does that make the darkness itself? Is the revealer of truth more villainous than the truth he reveals? Ra's al Ghul, Batman. For centuries, Ra's al Ghul and the League of Shadows have served as a check against human corruption. When a civilization becomes too decadent, too corrupt to save itself, the League arrives with fire. Rome, Constantinople, London, all purged and reborn stronger. Now Gotham stands at the same precipice. Beyond saving, beyond redemption. A cesspool creating more criminals than Batman could ever stop. Batman saves individual lives, while Gotham's systemic cancer spreads. Ra's offered a more permanent solution, excise the tumor entirely. Cruel? Perhaps, but sometimes the surgeon must cut to heal. If destroying one irredeemable city saves countless future generations from its poison, is that not the greater good? Is Batman's refusal to take permanent action truly heroism, or just moral cowardice disguised as principle? Tyler Durden, Fight Club. The things you own end up owning you. In a world where people measure their worth by their possessions, Tyler Durden offered liberation through destruction. We've built a society where men and women are reduced to their economic function, working jobs they hate to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. Tyler exposed this hollow existence for what it was. His methods escalated from consensual fighting to organized destruction of credit records, erasing debt, resetting the system. Extreme, yes. But when peaceful protest changes nothing, what options remain? Was Tyler a terrorist or a revolutionary? When the system itself is the disease, is dismantling it an act of destruction, or the prerequisite for something better to be built? Judge Holden, Blood Meridian, War is God. Judge Holden's chilling philosophy cuts to the core of human existence. Throughout history, peace has been the brief exception, violence the enduring rule. The judge doesn't create war. He simply acknowledges its permanence. He catalogs and studies violence not as an aberration, but as humanity's natural state. The judge is terrifying not because he's wrong, but because he might be right. War endures because young men love it and old men love it in them, while peacekeepers and idealists promise harmony just around the corner. The judge sees the blood-soaked truth of our species' history. If the arc of history doesn't bend toward justice, but circles endlessly back to conflict, is the judge truly a villain, or merely the only honest observer in a world of comforting lies?
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.